In the know, nonstop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com. Purple Daily, presented by Surly Brewing Company.
Tyler Higbee is one of the most underrated leaders that I've been around. Just how they operate, how they attack every single day. They push each other to be at their absolute best, and all of those guys in the end are really coachable. They're great communicators. So I definitely think the quarterback, if you got the right guy, is running the show, and those guys will follow him. But at the same time, I mean, I can't tell you how great of a group we have in that huddle. Depending on who's in there, we got great guys.
There he is right there. That's the new head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, Kevin O'Connell.
Is that a stash or a shadow that I'm seeing on his upper lip?
Dex, can you just play like 3 seconds of that clip?
Tyler Higbee is one of the most underrated leaders.
I think it's a shadow. What do you guys think?
Tyler Higbee is one of the most underrated leaders that I've been around.
I think it's a shadow.
I think it's.
But if
I think
it's
a
not,
a stash,
I'm
he's
even
out.
more. I'm in.
I'm pulling the plug today.
If he parties,
Just got in from my smoke break. What's up, guys? Oh, I love Higbee. Higbee's awesome.
Okay, can you promise me at the introductory press conference? Can you please show up and just ask one question? Hey, Kevin.
Kev.
You party?
You
Party?
Sorry, what? Do you
going with the smoke?
do you party?
What's up, dude? Nice stash.
Oh, man, this is Purple Daily. Daily Vikings entertainment, speculation, therapy, presented by our friends at Surly Brewing Company and TCL, which for your big game viewing pleasure here in about a week and a half has a new lineup of award-winning TVs delivering the most entertainment with stunning resolution, all at an affordable cost. Enjoy more of the things you love with TCL. You guys have helped us shatter some episode records. We had the most listened to ever and watched episode of Purple Daily a couple days ago with Alex Boone pulling the curtain back on what it's like to play for Jim Harbaugh. And then when that didn't happen, you guys helped us come close to another record in terms of live viewership during our emergency podcast yesterday when the Jim Harbaugh news came down, and then very quickly after the Vikings reached an agreement, at least verbally, with Kevin O'Connell. So there's a million things we can talk about today here, and we'll get to Random Viking of the Week. Please click the subscribe button, by the way, if you are watching on the Purple Daily YouTube channel, so we can help continue to spread the word about this awesome community of Vikings fans. But let's talk about what happened. What the hell happened yesterday? Jim Harbaugh came in, walked into the facility, according to reports, thought that he was going to shake a few hands and grab a pen and sign a contract, right? Hey, guys, Jim Harbaugh here. Who's got it better than us? Where's the pen? And the Wilfs and Kwesi are like, well, actually, let's talk for a while. Let's talk for 6-7 hours about what the hell happened at the end of the San Francisco run, and why do people at Michigan hate you a little bit? Let's talk about this stuff. So if you guys want, I'd love to just go through some of this reporting from The Athletic. I know we did a scoop session with Doogie on Mackey and Judd, and let's just sort of piece together, why isn't Jim Harbaugh the coach? Why is Kevin O'Connell the coach? And did they make the right decision? You guys game?
Yes, let's hear
Do
it.
it.
Who's got it better than us? So according to The Athletic, Dofa Mensa provided the Vikings with 3 coaches 2 weeks ago in his initial interview. 3 coaches on a short list. And those names were Kevin O'Connell, who the Vikings had already, I think at that point, at least had made contact with. Pat Graham, who was in 2 days ago for a 9-hour finalist interview. And Jim Harbaugh. So Harbaugh was on his short list, even though he had a front row seat to all the turmoil at the end of that San Francisco run, because he was in the building for those 2 tumultuous years. On Harbaugh, Chad Graff writes, some in the Vikings organization wondered about his leadership style and how he would align with their new goals in the post-Spielman-Zimmer era. They had just endured and had been weighed down by a volatile head coach's moody nature and a GM's inability to find a way to make it work. So there's some people in there, and even though I think Boone did a great job of explaining how different Jim Harbaugh is, there's definitely a moody and volatile nature to his personality as well. At first, the interview seemed like it was going well. Harbaugh saw the Vikings' gleaming new practice facility, and the team started to see some of the coach's most redeeming qualities. I'm just envisioning these guys, Harbaugh with his khakis, some big-ass hat.
just talking football.
Just staring up at the rafters of division championships. A buzz reverberated through the building. Is this really happening? Are we really going to hire Jim Harbaugh? Harbaugh started to feel it too. He left Ann Arbor believing he was not coming back, and the process got rolling. It started to look like he would be in Minnesota to stay. So this is like during the interview, during the process. Oh, this is going great. But the Vikings had some hard questions to ask. They wanted to know more about his style and his ability to work with others. They wanted to know more about how things ended with the 49ers. They wanted to hear his vision for leading this team back to the Super Bowl for the first time, amazingly, since 1977. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die. That's what we say every day here. 77, the last time they freaking went to a Super Bowl. Think about that. Sometime around 3 o'clock, for reasons that are not exactly clear, things started to take a left turn. The tenor started to change, and if there was any momentum at Harbaugh's back as he tried to secure the job, that momentum disappeared. And then around 6:30, ESPN reported that Harbaugh had called Michigan and said he's coming back. The reason had nothing to do with money or a contract because the Vikings did not offer Harbaugh the job. There do not appear to be any hard feelings on either side, just a realization that this was not the right fit. Harbaugh also texted the Pioneer Press and said, hey, the Wilfs are first class. The Vikings are on the precipice of greatness. Jim.
Yeah.
See ya.
Thanks, Chris.
So before we get into the Kevin O'Connell stuff here, what do you guys make of what happened yesterday with Jim Harbaugh?
I think it's really probably, and this is not sexy and fun, but I think it's basically, it wasn't a fit. It wasn't a fit. Look, the rule of thumb in this sport especially, all sports probably to a certain point, but this sport especially is what? You always hire the exact opposite, and not just in like philosophy, but also personality of what you had. So when Les got blown out after 2013, Zim came in and sat down and said, I'm going to change the culture, and we're going to be a team that's tough, and we're going to be a team that smacks people in the mouth, and I don't take any guff. And that had cost Zim previous jobs, but this time they're like, oh yeah, that's what we didn't have. And so that sold the Vikings, and probably largely at that time, Rick Spielman and the Wilfs on this is our guy because he is so different than Les. Well, guess what? Mike arguably overstayed his welcome. And so like the My Way or the Highway Act got old. And so Harbaugh is Harbaugh. Like he's not Zimmer, which we certainly discussed in depth with Boone. But he's still Jim Harbaugh, 58-year-old football lifer, football-y football guy. And so while he is definitely different than Mike, as far as Mike brought a defensive philosophy and Jim brought an offensive one, personality-wise, there's going to be similarities of some sort. They're close enough in age. O'Connell, 36, young, spry, offensive guy, sounds very upbeat, and I'm sure he's going to be a very different person, not just with the players, but everybody. I was told flat out that the Wilfs by the end were essentially embarrassed by how Mike treated the media. Like they didn't like all the condescending shit. Mike would be asked very fair questions and bristle. And right or wrong, because I personally don't care, but right or wrong, the people that owned the team were like, this isn't good for us. This guy looks stupid.
It just came off petulant. It was less about like offending, a beat writer. It's more about like, dude, what are you 12?
I don't think that this has to be like at 2:58 p.m. Central Time. Jim Harbaugh said, "Bleep all you, I'm coaching my way," and the Wilfs were like, "Oh my God, we can't hire him." Security. I think it's probably both sides said this ain't a fit. Now, my one question from the Harbaugh side, and this will probably get out at some point in time, is did he get Michigan to up the contract offer then that was already on the table by calling them and being like, yeah, I'm thinking of coming back, and that's possible.
Yeah.
But I don't know that we're going to find like a smoking gun around 3 p.m. Central. It all changed. I think that around that time, there might have been a very wise realization on both parts. You know what? For right now, this is not a fit.
I'd love to know more about exactly what was not a fit. Like
personality, I think.
and we'll get into some of that too, but like you kind of know what his personality is to some extent. I think you want to know how much has he learned, and actually I will rant about that for a second, because it does irritate me when people are criticizing the Vikings for why would you even bring him in? Why would you even bring a coach of his status and stature in and insult him by not having an offer ready, right? Well, I'm about to hire someone, if I'm the Wilfs and Kwesi, who's going to essentially run my multi-billion-dollar business and team. Like, it's kind of a CEO of the football side of the organization. And the last time that he had that role in the NFL, it was essentially an interpersonal disaster at the end, and it was unworkable. So I'm not just going to get on a Zoom for 5 minutes on a Saturday night and say, oh, Jim Harbaugh's available. Let's fly him in to sign a contract without asking him like 5 or 6 hours worth of questions. So I have no problem at all. I mean, you guys can answer too, but like with the people criticizing the Vikings for how dare you even fly him in? Well, he has questions to answer. He also hasn't been in the NFL. And by the way, I was in on Harbaugh, don't get me wrong, but like he hasn't been in the NFL in like almost a decade. So there are definitely hours worth of things to talk to him about before you just slide a contract in front of him.
So I think we also, though, learned, because I originally thought that the Wilfs would be thrilled. Like, Jim Harbaugh, we love football people. Jim Harbaugh's a huge name. Let's get a signed football and a helmet, and let's bring Jim in. I think we learned subsequently that Jim Harbaugh was one of the 3 names on Kwesi's list. And it seems to me that the people who were involved in the search beyond Kwesi had a good inkling that was the one name who probably didn't fit what they were after, because O'Connell and Graham are young, progressive football minds, and they probably thought that Kwesi would come with 3 guys like that, right? And so you've got young, really educated, smart defensive guy, young, educated, smart offensive guy, and Jim Harbaugh.
I love that, by the way. I love that he wasn't scared of.
And that takes balls, because like that's a big time. No, I can control this thing. Good for him. But the point being is, I think in retrospect too, there's a very good chance that Jim came here because they didn't want to tell Kwesi bleep that, but they also weren't on board. And I, by the way, so Jim Harbaugh is a weird dude who wanted to get this job if it probably fell on his terms. But I think that in retrospect, you guys, there's always this sort of bashing of the candidates that didn't get the job, especially if they came this close. And so now it's being painted as Jim Harbaugh showed up here to take the job, and he was going to have to, like, if he didn't know that, but by the time that he came here, he would be completely clueless, because it was made very clear. I mean, everybody's source was telling reporters he doesn't have this job. And the thing too is, so now it's being painted as, well, O'Connell had done a great job of like breaking down the Vikings roster and talking about Kirk. But as Phil said days ago now and reported, basically, Jim Harbaugh had started to do the same thing. So it's not like Jim showed up on Wednesday and was like, which quarterback again? Oh, Cousins. I've seen him play. So like, it's not fair to paint this as, oh, Jim Harbaugh screwed the pooch too. I honestly, as a guy that loves controversy and chaos, I honestly think that this was not going to be in the Vikings' greater mind, not just Kwesi's, a fit. I really think it might be that simple.
I think when his name came up, because they basically had their initial interviews, then obviously Cam gets hired and he starts to kind of pick apart which ones do I like, which ones I don't like. And then when Harbaugh's name comes up, you're intrigued, and they have a bit of a relationship, so naturally you explore that. I think the timing, too, of this is just a little weird. Like, let's say the Vikings don't win that Saints game in 2019 in the wild card round, and Zim does bolt to Dallas, or they trade Zim's rights to Dallas, and the Vikings are still kind of in a win-now mode. Like, the roster is still good going into 2020, and Jim Harbaugh's name becomes available. I think it's probably more likely that he could have gotten this job because the roster was built to still win. It feels like with the current structure of the roster, it's a little too late. And they need to basically kind of not blow this up, but hit a restart. Like if they wanted to do Jim Harbaugh, it was probably 2 years ago. That would have made more sense of the timing to do it. And now You got a young GM, you have a young head coach. I don't know if it's going to be a full-on 2-14. We're going to tank because I still think this roster is too good enough to tank. But I think just the timing of when Jim became available to the Vikings, it just wasn't a fit.
I think that's a good point. Like it does. It's weird because at least on this show, I think we've approached this offseason from a realistic mindset of it's the fourth worst cap situation. You got a 34-year-old quarterback who's fine, but he's making this ridiculous amount of money. It's the offensive line needs to be fixed still. They need a breather in 2022. They don't have to be terrible, but like you need almost like a grace year to fix everything. And then Jim Harbaugh's name came up in the mix, and you're like, wow, oh man,
Right.
that's interesting. Okay, what could he do? Could you somehow run this back to some extent? And it's never been something that I have personally advocated for, but it was this intrigue. And now that they've settled on, and not settled, like now that they have chosen Kevin O'Connell to be their head coach, let's read a couple snippets also about him from this Athletic article, and then we can talk about what it means. So Chad Graff from The Athletic writes, the Vikings search committee flew to Los Angeles on Monday and interviewed O'Connell and Raheem Morris. Both conversations went well, but O'Connell, quote, blew them away, according to a source. He had studied the team's roster from the previous season, came prepared with ideas on how to improve the team, and was able to offer a nuanced review of quarterback Kirk Cousins, whom he coached for 3 seasons in Washington. Now, my initial thought on this is, and I just pulled up a list here on Pro Football Reference just for fun, is that hiring the inexperienced up-and-coming coordinator is actually much more risky than hiring Jim Harbaugh. People are looking at Jim Harbaugh as like this huge risk because of his personality, right? Well, if you bring him in and he's volatile and he pisses off Mark Wilf or something, then everything is going to get blown to smithereens. Well, he was 44-19 in San Francisco, despite all sorts of volatility. And so you're getting a guy that at every stop in college and in the pros has won at a pretty high level, right? 3 straight NFC championship games. It took him a little bit at Michigan to win big, but went to the college football playoff. Like if you hire Jim Harbaugh, the risk is shelf life. It might not last for more than like 3 or 4 years. Are you ready to capitalize in that window if you're going to take a step back? Like by the time you get to year 3, is he going to have alienated people? Are you ready to jump into a 3-4 year Harbaugh window?
Right.
But if you are, you're probably going to win football games. There are dozens and dozens of up-and-coming coordinator types. I mean, Brad Childress was one of them. Matt Nagy, you see that in your own division, right? There's all kinds of them that come in for 2 or 3 years, 4 years, get fired. They're done. Like it's a cycle in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And so Kevin O'Connell has to prove that he's not just another one of these coordinators that gets a job for 3 years and then gets fired and then goes back to being a coordinator. Mm-hmm. So now it's a risk I think worth taking because it feels like Kevin O'Connell, from an age perspective, everything, you can be patient. He's not 58 years old, ready to make $10 million a year and win now. You might have more leeway to take a deep breath, take a step back, maybe find a quarterback of the future, see what happens in 2022 with a real eye on 2023. And so I love the idea of it. I'm in on it. But I think people are confusing the risk. It's like, well, O'Connell's more of the safe hire. No, O'Connell's the risky hire. Harbaugh was actually the safe hire if you want to win football games in the next 3 years. What do you guys think?
I think this is literally the definition of weighing the process against results. The results of Jim Harbaugh aren't super debatable. He's going to come in and spark you. And the question is, for how long? And you're probably going to win, and it's going to be like a drug high, but at some point in time, something's going to happen, and it's probably going to come apart just a bit, if not a lot. This team, I think right now, right or wrong too, so I'm not even passing judgment on this, is more geared towards the process. And that's why I continue to say the next question is, and what's going to make or break Kwesi and O'Connell is very simple. The quarterback. Can you find one? It's why I don't think Kirk is the guy. Kirk is the results end of things, which was he was brought here to win immediately. He didn't. It didn't work. And I don't think that there's now a process of let's go back with Kirk. And if we just change the coach, I think that this is probably as close to, without without having been near the dumpster fire, because the Vikings have not been, it's as close to the Bengals situation with Zach Taylor, and then they got Burrow, as you can possibly get. So I don't think that this is a Jim Harbaugh comes here and he wins and it's 5 great years. That's certainly a possibility and might have been a chance worth taking, as Deck said, in a different time period. But the process here, I think, is what's important from an organization and owners who, from my viewpoint and what's been reported, clearly lost some control. Like there's clearly things going on with that team in the last year or two that they didn't know about. So it feels like they're trying to be re-engaged now. So I think they're trying to do the process correctly. And that's how we get to where we are today.
Yeah. And it's not nearly as sexy or splashy, but it might just be the medicine that this franchise needs. It might be. I also think Jim Harbaugh, in a weird way, would have been the medicine this franchise needed too. Alex Boone had me even more sold just talking about
it's
all the pros and cons, but like just how much Jim Harbaugh would potentially come in and change the franchise. But I also am so intrigued by the way that offense is the direction offense is heading in the NFL, and the Vikings have not really been on that train at all. Like the Kubiaks and Zimmer, I mean, it's all just like throwback to the early 2000s and 90s. The Vikings in the late 90s, 20 years ago, were one of the most innovative offensive teams in the league, right? Part of it's just they drafted Randy Moss and they're just throwing the ball down the field. And so I'm kind of excited for this team to get back to offensive-centric strategy and football and turn that stadium into a fun track meet stadium where you want to come in here, you better score 30 points because this thing's going to be revved up. And whether that means, finding a new quarterback this year or riding Kirk Cousins, I just like the emphasis on offense is where you need to be as a franchise in 2022.
Absolutely. And the thing too is, so I saw some stories about this morning. O'Connell comes from the same tree, the Shanahan, basically,
Shanahan,
basically the same tree that Kubiak is considered to come from. But the difference is this. The difference is Clint Kubiak ran an offense that basically threw it back as far as you could possibly go. If you watch Kyle now with San Fran, McVay now, what I believe Taylor does, it's not the philosophy that's the problem. It's when you don't update it and put in wrinkles. And that's
preset motions.
Exactly. Yeah. So like if people come back now and say, well, yeah, but I mean, he's going to run the same philosophy that Clint did. Okay. The philosophy is not the key. The execution and ideas that go into that, the tweaks are. So that's where there's going to be room for Justin Jefferson's usage to get creative. Dalvin Cook. So I do think that we will see the starting point of formations at times might be the same, but I firmly believe that what we're also going to see is a hard reset and update that is going to make this offense look progressive for the first time in a long time here.
Yeah. Speaking of progressive, let's talk about how progressive Judd is when it comes to weight loss.
Oh, that's exactly right, Phil. In fact, because of my friends at Livia Weight Control Centers, I am down 30 plus pounds. Declan showed an old clip of us from Dex, late summer today?
Yeah, like it was early September, late summer, yep.
Let's just say the face was a little bit too fat. The face was very, very big.
Yeah, like you had about 14 marshmallows stuffed in your cheeks.
Jowly, if you will. But now down 30 plus pounds, and I want you to join me on the I Did It 8-week challenge where you get your first 8 weeks for free. That's right, for free. In that time period, I dropped 26 pounds, and you can do the same. Imagine all those clothes fit, and you look good for spring. 855 go LIVEA or livea.com, LIVEA.com. And here's the best part. Inside or outside of this state, you can join because you can do a consultation with their dietitian via Zoom. You can get the food shipped to you. And I'm going to tell you right now, this plan is easy. This plan is simple. And best of all, it's effective and 8 weeks for free. Livea, LIVEA.com. shoutout.com, 855-GO, Livia.
Also, hello to our friends at Federated Mutual Insurance Company, helping business owners for over 100 years. They're one of us. They're based in Owatonna, and they specialize in risk management. They are like an offensive line protecting you as a business owner and making sure that you're just able to operate and maximize the success of your business. You can find out more about all the tools and resources, including MyShield, available to you at federatedinsurance.com. And remember, at Federated, it's our business to protect yours. Before we get to a random Viking of the week, what other big takeaways do you have now that Kevin O'Connell is the Minnesota Vikings head coach?
Dex, go ahead.
I'm just curious on what the patience level is going to be with him during his tenure. Because it could very well still be a 6 to 7 win football team as it's constructed right now. Like if you quote unquote ran it back. If they got a bridge guy, if they draft a quarterback, does that change the expectations, the excitement? And I'm just curious kind of how that is going to play out with his tenure here, because it is a risky hire. Like if you wanted to win right now, you probably would have went the Jim Harbaugh route. But Kevin O'Connell is a young coach who, people are worried about. He hasn't called plays, but he is your polar opposite from Zimmer. He's this offensive-minded guy that could maybe get more out of this team and be more collaborative. So I think the patience level, my gut tells me that it's actually going to be longer, even in the NFL, which, shelf life for coaches is basically 3 to 4 years. But I'm curious on how patient they truly will be. Because, what if it is a disaster? Like, what if they are indeed 2-14 and the preseason expectations don't hit? How long can they continue to be that team? That's what I'm curious about.
I almost feel like you have to, especially if you trade Cousins, like you have to strip away expectations then for 2022, right? Because I just don't know. I don't know what the value is in expectations for 2022. I just think not that you can't win some games in 22, but I feel like you should just don't have to tank, but let's just take a breather here. Let's not worry about grinding out an extra 2 wins and
Patrick is going to hate me for saying this, and I'd like to apologize, but I think the expectation for 22 is resetting and rebuilding the culture around your team. Not because it was awful, it wasn't good, but not because you had become the Lions, but because I think that's the key thing. I think you need to reestablish your identity, and it's going to change, and that's good. It should change. But I really think that is, like, in my opinion, 22 is a building block year. Like you're setting the foundation right now, right? Of who you're going to be, what you're going to be about, and it's going to be different and it's going to change. I think that is the most important thing. And look, if you play like a team, you could make the playoffs. I don't know. There's 7 seeds now, but that shouldn't be the primary goal. The primary goal should be to establish an identity and hit the ground running in 2023. I think that's a very fair expectation.
Yeah. I think, God, I'm just, there's so many things. I think, the thing I'm the most curious about is what they do at quarterback. And we're going to talk so much about this over the next few weeks. We actually did a deep dive on Mackey and Judd today, but Kevin O'Connell has strong opinions on Kirk Cousins. They worked together. He was his quarterback's coach in 2017. And I think part of the thing that pushed it over the top for him to wow the Vikings brass is how prepared he was with a Kirk Cousins evaluation, according to reports. No, we don't know what that evaluation said.
Two words. Trade him.
Yeah, the big binder. Yep. I'm sure he sees positives, and I'm sure he sees reasons for why you should move on. I think there's probably more front office reasons to move on from Kirk than there are like coaching reasons. I think a coach looks at him and says, "Yeah, I can work with this. This is great. He's one of the 14 best quarterbacks in the world. I can make this happen." Front office says, "Yeah, but he's got a $45 million cap hit, and he's 34 years old, and there's a huge demand for quarterbacks. We could probably get a draft pick." Like, how do they start parsing this apart between Kwesi and KOC? That's my biggest curiosity.
I'd be very surprised if Jim Harbaugh and Kevin O'Connell had the same answer to what would you do about Kirk.
I think Jim would have said, and I'm getting this. I'm going to say this is 75% reporting and 25% educated speculation. I think Jim would have tried to roll forward with Kirk.
Yes, I agree.
And I think Kevin O'Connell probably feels like he probably had a good relationship with Kirk and probably sees the positives in Kirk. But as I told you guys on Mackey and Judd, Kirk Cousins built his entire career, a lot of it positive, through a risk aversion mindset, sticking to a pre-programmed process as much as possible, and taking what the defense gives him. And that last one is a direct quote from Kirk week after week after week. He talks also, I haven't read his book, but apparently he wrote a book at some point, like about quarterback.
I got to find this book.
Because Arif Hassan referenced it in his athletic article. And
Great
like the
piece.
first anecdote in the book is about this one time where he threw he didn't align.
Against your club.
He didn't put the receiver in against Notre Dame.
Notre Dame, he threw an irresponsible pass, a very far pass, and he never forgave himself.
And that has stuck in his head to like not be irresponsible on the football field. I think if you want to win a Super Bowl, you have to have a quarterback that doesn't lead with risk aversion.
Right.
I'm not saying go rifle off 30 picks like Jameis Winston, but your primary thought can't be, oh my God, I can't make a mistake. And that, more often than not, is where Kirk's entire quarterback ethos stems from.
And this is going to sound really weird, but the only way I think to get away with that mindset or something close, you guys, is to be Rodgers. Because he is risk adverse too, but he's just so good. I mean, Kirk is good. He ain't that good, right? Because I think there's some similarities between the two of them at times in the fact that they don't want to make dumb mistakes and get picked. The difference is one is going into Canton on the first ballot easily, and the second guy is good.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
if you can find that guy, more power to you.
And we're going to have to wait now until after the Super Bowl for the Vikings to officially announce Kevin O'Connell. But they obviously have told everyone everyone who's a reporter knows that it's Kevin O'Connell. That's why all those reports came out yesterday. So, all right, boys, it is time now for the random Viking of the week here. That's right.
You like that? You like that?
Presented by our friends at Surly Brewing Company, Judd.
Yes, you know what? I might lose this game. I might lose, but I always win. And you say, Judd, how do you win every time? I am undefeated when I have one of these in my hand. Surly Furious IPA. That's right. You never lose when this glorious can is by your side. Protect the Furious at all costs. I trust that as the sports weekend approaches, that you too will have a Surly Furious by your side. And you know what? If you do, get out that cell phone, take a picture, and show us your
cans.
Show us your cans. Show us your taps.
At Jay Zolgad on Twitter, JZULGAD. Show me what you're drinking, but make it a Surly. And you know what? I would pick personally the Furious, but there's plenty of good Surly products out there.
All kinds of good stuff.
All right. Let's go.
Random Viking of the week. If you're new to the show, this is where Judd and Declan are pitted against each other, and I give them a series of clues. You guys can answer up to 3 times incorrectly before you lose. You can shout out answers at any time. You can ask me questions if you want. I can refuse to answer. Judd has a 15-8 lead on Declan, and Declan, with some help from, I would say a lot of help from Tyler Fornes last week, is on a 2-game winning streak here.
Tyler Fornes, it was 3 questions?
Yeah, it was like 3.
It might have been 2.
It was unbelievable.
It was really impressive.
I'm not going to compete against Tyler Fornes.
I will say this random Viking of the week, I could see it being like a record quick answer. I could also see it dragging on for a while.
Okay.
This random Viking of the week originally hails from St. Cloud, Minnesota.
Oh, Declan should. Dex.
This random Viking of the week stands 6 feet 5 inches tall.
Look at Declan. Look at the mind working. Look at the mind working behind the glasses.
This random Viking of the week played for these NFL coaches: Mike Holmgren, Jim Mora Jr., Leslie Frazier, Pete Carroll, and Bruce Arians. How about that list? Some Hall of Famers out there. This random Viking.
That's a long tenure. Holmgren to Mora to Frazier
Is
to
that
Arians.
an order? Is that, or have you mixed up those coaches?
I mixed them up a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I figured. That's.
I will
what
say that I think Declan may be thinking incorrectly about the timeline here.
Okay.
And I understand why you're thinking incorrectly, but you're thinking.
So you're reading Declan's mind?
Yep. Declan's thinking about the 90s because of Mike Holmgren. This random Viking of the week was a second-team Sports Illustrated All-American in college. He was also an all-state tennis player in high school.
St. Cloud Tech has good high school, good tennis program.
He did not go to St. Cloud Tech.
No, he didn't. That's even more impressive.
Answering a question without being prompted. We have a very friendly Alex Trebek today. Second team SI All-American. He was the second team SI All-American.
His high school was in Meeker County, Minnesota. I'm not going to tell you the high school yet.
Okay.
Too obvious. This random Viking of the week made $15 million in his NFL career. His college coach was Charlie Weiss. Oh, this is dragging on long. I kind of thought you guys were going to get this right away. All right, this random Viking of the week played for 3 NFL teams in his career. The Vikings, obviously, the Cardinals, and the Seahawks. Not in that order. In fact, he is a member of the Seahawks 35th anniversary team, whenever that was.
The Seahawks 35th anniversary team?
Mm-hmm. I find that to be a little questionable, but all right.
30. Oh, so the Seahawks 35th anniversary. So
He's not like a legendary Seahawks player.
he's good.
But he was pretty damn good. Pretty damn good with the Seahawks.
And he's from St. Cloud?
John Carlson?
There it is.
Oh, he's on the Seahawks 35th anniversary team?
According to Wikipedia, yes.
All right.
There it is. Declan.
35th anniversary team?
Don't ask me, man. I'm just looking through here. Let me pull it up. The Seahawks 35th anniversary team.
It's actually
Matt
the second time I've
Hasselbeck.
used them.
Now they're let's be honest. This was 2010. It's not like the Seahawks up until 2010 didn't exactly have like the most illustrious history. Hasselbeck, Sean Alexander, Steve Largent, Brian Blades, Bobby Ingram, John Carlson was the only tight end. Walter Jones, Steve Hutchinson.
That threw and Walter Jones was great. That threw me more for
Nate Burles said
that poison pill, baby, poison pill. That threw me more for a loop that John Carlson would have been on that 35th anniversary team than anything. I should have remembered that from the Cardinals. Where did he go to high school?
Litchfield.
Okay, yeah, because I didn't identify him with. I know he's from Minnesota. I didn't identify him with St. Cloud.
Yeah,
I remember
Litchfield guy. Big time.
I remember a young teenage Declan listened to a certain sports radio station, and a certain sports personality was very fired up for bringing the hometown boy to work be a tight end from the Seattle Seahawks, and he's going to unleash this Vikings passing game for Leslie Frazier and be a good security blanket for Christian Ponder. That didn't work.
It didn't quite happen.
That didn't work.
And Patrick Royce should never be forgiven for that.
He caught 40 passes over 2 years with the Vikings.
Concussion problems, right?
I think so.
Actually,
I wanna say
the exact quote is on Wikipedia from that said sports commentator. I remember this vividly.
Oh my
He is,
God.
quote, the combination of John Carlson and Kyle Rudolph. The combination of John Carlson and Kyle Rudolph would be the best tight end combination besides Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez. I remember this vividly in college. I think it was my freshman year. And I remember driving thinking, and I was probably
You
also
found
still. It's in John Carlson's Wikipedia page. It's in his Minnesota. There's 2 sentences for John Carlson's Minnesota Vikings career. One of them is Paul Allen of KFAN Minnesota once said the combination of John Carlson and Kyle Rudolph would be the best tight end combination besides Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez.
I'm in a slump right now. I'm a slump buster of some sort.
Listen, we're all wrong on things. We're all wrong on things.
We are. Oh, boy.
That's aggressive, though.
Ooh, boy.
All right. Well, there you go. Random Viking of the week, Declan.
Back in
3
back
in a
on it.
row.
Yeah, 15-9 now.
15-9. Nice work.
I'm gonna have to come more prepared next week.
Tomorrow we got you a 4-question Friday. We're also going to hit you over the weekend with Purple Daily reads the comments. So get your, we'll sift through YouTube comments. We got a ton of comments and questions and thoughts and critiques coming in through the Score North app. There's a feedback tab, but yeah, thanks for hanging out with us. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die here on Purple Daily.